Now, coverage you can count on. This is WTVM Newsleader 9.
The court-ordered execution of Troy Anthony Davis has been carried out. The time of death is 11:08 p.m.
After 2 decades on death row, multiple appeals, and a last-minute plea to the U.S. Supreme Court, Troy Davis has been executed.
We'll have all the details of the events that played out, including what happened the few minutes before Troy Davis's death, plus reactions from family and protesters.
Well, after a trial and decades of appeals, Troy Davis has been put to death.
The convicted killer died by lethal injection late Wednesday night after an unsuccessful series of legal maneuvers by his attorneys.
Supporters of Davis quietly took in the news outside the Georgia prison south of Atlanta, where Davis was put to death Wednesday night. Demonstrators here and around the world maintained Davis's innocence and demanded he be allowed to live.
But his attorneys ran out of legal options Wednesday when the Supreme Court rejected his last appeal just about 3 hours after the scheduled execution. Davis died by lethal injection at 11:08 p.m. Newsleader 9's Laura Ann Sills spent the day on the prison grounds in Jackson and was there when witnesses of the execution explained how it played out, including Davis's last words.
Responsible for what happened.
Witnesses to Troy Davis's execution say it went very quietly. Davis did not eat his last meal and refused the sedative that would put him to sleep before the lethal drugs were injected into his body. Minutes before he would die, the warden asked Davis if he wanted to say anything. He addressed the family of the man he's convicted of killing, the McPhails, first.
And Davis lifted his head up, looked at that first row, and made a statement in which he said he wanted to talk to the McPhail family and said that despite the situation you're in, he was not the one who did it. He said that he was not personally responsible for what happened that night, that he did not have a gun. He said to the family that he was sorry for their loss, but also said that he did not take their son, father, brother. He said to them to dig deeper into this case, to find out the truth. He asked his family and friends to keep praying, to keep working, and keep the faith. And then he said to the prison staff, the ones he said who are going to take my life, he said to them, may God have mercy on your souls. And his last words were to them, may God bless your souls. Then he put his head back down, the procedure began, and about 15 minutes later it was over.
Witnesses say it was one of the most eerie feelings they've ever felt. As Troy Davis took his last breath, the only thing they could hear in the room was the air conditioner running. In Jackson, I'm Laura Ann Sills, WTVM Newsleader 9.
Now, Davis has been scheduled to die 3 times before, most recently in October 2008 when the execution was halted by the U.S. Supreme Court 2 hours before it was scheduled to take place.
Yesterday's execution came 22 years after the murder of Savannah police officer and Columbus native Mark McPhail, who was 27 when he was killed. Davis was 42.
Protesters rallied all day, maintaining high energy and passion for their causes. Our reporters tell us there were no incidents and the protests never turned violent. But hundreds said they not only showed up to get all of their messages across, but to also pray for a miracle.
So we're here for 2 reasons. One, praying for another miracle because it happened in 2008. And secondly, to say that whatever happens, it will not happen in silence. People are outraged. We need to have laws that protect people from facing death sentences based on eyewitness testimony alone.
Hundreds of police officials, including the Georgia State Patrol and SWAT teams, stood by throughout the day.
Troy Davis supporters weren't the only ones who flooded the area surrounding the Georgia Department of Corrections in Jackson, protesting that the execution was unfair.
Newsleader 9's Taylor Barnhill, who was also live at the prison, tells us how even Davis's attorney said his execution was unjust.
Once witnesses to Troy Davis's execution exited the Department of Corrections, they stopped to give their thoughts on the events that unfolded that day.
The killing of innocents, such as Troy Anthony Davis, however legal it may be in Georgia, however legal it may be in the eyes of the Supreme Court of the United States, this sort of legalized lynching is not right.
Even down to the final moments of his life, Davis maintained his innocence regarding the death of Savannah police officer Mark McPhail.
He called upon the McPhail family, his family and friends, and all of those who would want what's right to prevail and what's wrong to be crushed, to investigate this case honestly, thoroughly, and find in the truth that he didn't kill Officer McPhail, but that somebody else did.
Troy Davis's attorney added that it wasn't just the McPhail family that was suffering through this entire process. He said that the Davises also lost a son tonight. In Jackson, Taylor Barnhill, WTVM, Newsleader 9.
Now here in Columbus, Mark McPhail's mother waited at her home for word that Troy Davis had been executed. Friends and local law enforcement waited with her until she received word from the state attorney general's office. Newsleader 9 was there and caught up with Annalise McPhail just after she received the call.
I really don't know. I'm glad it's over. Said I don't have to worry about that anymore, and it's not going to haunt me, or I don't have to go to any more courts or hearings or briefings. That death is finally over, and I hope I can get my peace back. I need that. There will never be closure because Mark is gone. He will always be in my heart, and I can, you know, you just never get away from that. That goes with me to my grave.
McPhail's mother says that after 22 years, she's hoping her family can finally have peace.